Musicians, anxious, depressed. Well, here are some charts and graphs which support this. So, not only are musicians suffering from anxiety at high rates, but compared to the general population at alarmingly high rates. So, what makes these wonderful beings that snatch songs out of the ether so perennially sad, and so much so than the average population? Hi, I'm Fuzz Culture, and I've been a music producer and a musician my entire adult life. The one thing that has struck out to me as a professional musician is that every musician I've ever met has suffered from anxiety or some other deep seated personal self esteem issue. ऐसा क्या हो गया भाई? Apparently, the people who bring life, love, and reflection into people's lives clearly didn't get the memo themselves. Recently, the question of why this plagues musicians so much has been irritating my funny bone, and I decided to try and find out why. Here are some of the reasons I think this happens, but swallow this with a pinch of salt. Number one, a childhood which either had too much or too little affection. The problem with my particular breed of snowflake is that we were born knowing that we are snowflakes. Most musicians I've ever met have told me that they could sense and hear rhythm, sound, hear patterns in music much before they ever started a musical instrument. This made musicians feel naturally different from other children around them at the time. And this probably gave them the feeling that, you know what, maybe I'm a little different from these monkeys. And basically, while growing up, I saw this musical impulse being distributed within two types of kids: the extroverted and the introverted gifted kids. The extroverted kids were usually the popular kids at the school. They were at all the parties, they were playing guitar on stage, they were getting the accolades. And at a very young age, they were like, Bhai, kuch ho na ho, main to hero hoon. And this is what life's gonna be like. The other gifted kids were usually the weirdos. They were usually the ones practicing while others partied. They loved their arts and artists. And most of them spent their youth being slightly weird, slightly different, but definitely having a very distinct sense of personality and individualism to them. So, as you can see, regardless of whether these kids were brought up in a loving or a non loving home, because of the musical impulse, they knew from a very young age that something was slightly different about them. And this realization is important. Since a very young age, our dear artiste was painfully aware of his or her own potential in a way that most other people cannot comprehend. And this made them feel different from a very, very young age. Number two, no one believes you when you decide to go professional. After having gone through a pretty varied and I would say interesting childhood, our dear musician enters into that phase of his life where they decide whether or not to go professional. They know they're talented and gifted. They know they have potential and कि दुनिया मुट्ठी में है if they just take the leap. But this is where most of our musicians' lives turn from slightly interesting to downright troublesome. I can guarantee you this: when a budding artist told his friends or family that he wanted to take this little hobby of his and go professional with this, they were met with absolute disbelief and mostly with questions of kyun, what, why, how, music, how do you make money on this? Most of the friends and family our budding artist told his feelings about probably thought that he was going to die under a bridge somewhere, under starvation, and probably in poverty and full of drugs. This is the only profession I know where the entire learning phase is looked as this charming little hobby that someone's friend or family member has. But the minute they decide to go pro, it's looked at like blasphemy on the rules of life itself. Of course, no one gets paid for making music, and this disbelief that everyone has about our young musicians' choice is constantly hammered down his head. And this, I think, leaves a very big chip on the shoulder of the musician who's trying to go pro. Imagine going up to a law student and saying, "So when are you getting up with this law hobby of yours and taking up something serious?" ये तुम्हारे musician दोस्त को सारे time बताया जाता है, and I can guarantee you this. Number three, doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. Now, from the previous highly stressful situation, a young musician now tries to take up one of two decisions: either get a full time job and play music on the weekends, or go full time and try this music thing as a profession. Now, the unfortunate part of having this musical gene at the back of your head is like it's an alternate voice always talking to you, always telling you, look what you could have done, look what you could have been, look at the songs you haven't finished. And this voice never goes away. So, if a musician takes the road of getting a full time job and doing this on the weekends, this voice will constantly be at the back of your head. Look what could have happened if you did this full time. Look what your friends are doing. So, no matter what job a fellow musician gets, at some point he will end up quitting and giving this music thing a proper shot because it deserves it. I've known people who are successful designers, architects, lawyers who've given up their entire careers to give this music thing a shot because this music genetic in you does not let you be without it. For some of us who just jump straight in and go ahead and try to be a professional musician young, the reality of what it means becomes very clear. When others party, you work. Other people's weekends are your weekdays. You don't get paid on time. The deals are shady. Sometimes the people are shady. The music industry is known for having all types of people, and this is something that just comes along with the bloody job. So the minute you've gone pro, the variable paycheck and the uncertainty of when payment comes is something that eats you up and is a tension which never leaves your head. That is an anxiety which is constantly at the back of a musician's head. Where is my next paycheck coming from? Number four, if you fail, you're judged. If you succeed, you're judged. This is the best part of being a musician. People love to see artists in misery. When a musician's not at the top of the ladder, he's constantly reminded by his friends and peers of where he could have been and where he's not. So that point of success becomes something that you're always looking at. Because music is such a public profession, comparison and jealousy become a part of a musician's life, and it kind of becomes something that goes from other people telling you about what you want to you believing what you want. If, on the other hand, you do succeed, I've still barely seen anyone who's reached that height of success still be happy. In the entertainment business, I think, like, success is very transitory. It's a small period of time. And I've seen people who've been successful in the past stay in the past. This brief season where you were successful becomes this kind of milestone in your life, and everything you do now is compared to that. So number one, you're judging yourself for not being as successful as you used to be, and everyone around you is also constantly reminding you of कि oh sir, आपका वो गाना बहुत ही बढ़िया था, 20 साल पहले जो आपने किया था मजा आ गया. Even people who get successful, like, success is fleeting and they are stuck in there. So whether you succeed or you don't, you're judged by both people around you and yourself. And this is a struggle I think a lot of people don't even acknowledge. Number five, an absolutely unpredictable life. This one is pretty obvious. The life of a musician is pretty chaotic and unpredictable. When people party, that's your time to work. When people sleep, it's your time to get rolling. People's weekends are your weekdays. The pay is variable. Sometimes there's a lot of money, sometimes there's no money. So either you're home a lot or you're never home. There is absolutely no ground beneath your feet. And this much uncertainty and variability in your day to day life and interactions and your payment schedules is bound to make anyone anxious. Even the most stable of people would get anxiety if they haven't yet. If you want to make a stable person anxious, tell him कि 2 साल bhai, 2 years, just 2 years go and try being a pro musician. You'll have a good time. Number six, an extreme between the highs and the lows. So, if you've paid any attention to what I've been saying, you'll have realized one thing, that the life of a musician is one that is of extreme highs and extreme lows. These highs and lows make you feel like kings and queens on days when things are going well. To the other hand, feeling absolutely worthless when a call from a booking agent or a gig hasn't come up. The extremity of this difference between your emotional highs and lows that I think a musician faces is so much that I think if a normal person went through it, I can guarantee you will end up with anxiety. A final thought, if you've seen the video through and through, I think it must become clear to you that a musician who's not anxious or depressed is the anomaly and it's not the other way around. So, if you know a musician, if you have a friend who's a musician, try not being to them, or just be nice to them, be kind to them, support them when they ask you for some support. Literally, they want you to press like on a button. I mean, they're not even asking for too much. And if you're a musician, thank you for doing this. Like, thank you for providing art to the world, and the world needs whatever the you're thinking. Be kind to yourself. Don't be that tough on yourself. Life is what it is. We've chosen this path, but this is where we walk, and we'll keep moving, alright? Leave a comment if this rings true for you or anyone you know. Hear my latest track, Corpse Bride, here, which deals with some of these issues, although in a more morbid yet fun way. So, check it out. Thank you.